So let's talk about the panel tonight and the topic du jour. It's the neighborhood around us, and we have asked 4 members of the community here to come and talk to us a little bit about their observation about what's going on in our community. It is not necessarily saying, oh, Good Shepherd should be doing this. It's really sort of set the table around the neighborhood, what they're seeing, and what needs to be done. Maybe we have a role in that. Maybe we don't, but they'll help define that and maybe give you guys some ideas to bring forward for the church in the future. So first of all, let me introduce our panelists. First of all, Lieutenant Mike Hansen, Madison Police Department. Mike and I have worked together for years back when I was in TV, and got to call Mike every morning to find out what was going on overnight. Now Mike is working out of the West District as lieutenant and doing a great job over there. Second person, Sheree Wallace. Some of you may know her. Community organizer, also healthcare worker in the neighborhood, has taken a lot of steps to try and build community here in the Meadowood area, and has been working a lot with us at the church about that. Third person, Ernie Horonek. Did I get it right? Close enough. Ernie has been a resident around here since 1960, as I found out on Saturday. Also a longtime Ridgewood Pool member, which I'm also a member of. Has owned rental property in the Balsam Road area since 1978, and has seen a lot of the changes that have happened in this neighborhood, and has been a critical part in working with neighbors trying to bring people together here. The final person is Becky Kunder. Okay, good. Pronunciations, yeah, get out of television and suddenly I forget how to do it. Anyway, she is the principal of Orchard Ridge Elementary here across the sort of kitty corner to us. Another group that we work closely with here at Good Shepherd by providing snacks and providing pen pals, and has a real good connection to the community as well. Finally, let me introduce the moderator, who I'm going to turn it over to in a second, a person who was a former coworker of mine and I can still consider a good friend. Adam Schrager, morning anchor here at WISC TV. He has done a lot of these over the years, and I am happy that he was willing to join us tonight and help run things tonight. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Adam.
Thank you very much, Rick. So the goal tonight is, in many ways, to see where we've been and understand where we're going. And maybe I was just telling Lieutenant Hansen, maybe this is the best way to start. When I first came out to Channel 3 28 years ago, the development that has, I mean, it's a dramatically different landscape as you drive Raymond Road, as you live in this neighborhood. I can only imagine for all of you who live and work in this neighborhood that it's changed as well. Sheree, let me start with you. I guess this idea of kind of how have things changed, and where do you see it still changing?
Things have really changed in our community, and I'm going to start with the community center, the library, and the collaboration of having a community liaison officer, and having community leaders. Mm-hmm. The development of affordable houses has made our community grow as far as with kids, but that's how things have changed. And community leaders that have vested time into the people in the community, like a Coach Assad and his program, to help you develop leadership skills and job skills and be dependable people, you know, doing positive things. So we didn't have that 5 years ago. So now we have that, and along with a community health office, along with having churches that we can come to and talk about what's going on in the community, and they listen. Having this church open their doors up for our community suppers to build relationships with other people in the community. This is a hard job. This is a hard job for anybody in this community to work. A community leader, a police officer, it's a hard job because we continue to get different people moving in, moving out due to the population of the apartments. So when we think we got one group of people knowing about the ideas we trying to do or the things we doing, they're moving in and they're moving out. So keeping this information and keeping everybody being a part of what's going on in the community, it's a hard job, and we've been really working hard to do that. And where you always see negative things, we got a lot of positive things, like joining forces for family, Orchard Ridge Church, John Road. We got things that you all don't know about because you don't have to come down that road. You don't have to come and get a resume built or written, or someone to get you a job, or so them the services that you all don't need. But these are the services that's in this community, building people up. We have an alderman that is vested in keeping us a part of what's going on in the community. We got a county supervisor that keep us abreast, and tell you the truth, it's the one for Matt Veldra. Let me see that I have leadership skills, taking me to the first meeting down in the county building, I wouldn't be here. But that's what's going on in the community, and that has shaped me, molded me, and that's my job now, is to try to keep everybody abreast on the things that's going on in a community that's less fortunate.
Ernie, how have things changed? I mean, you're going back 4 or 5 decades, so it's pretty dramatic change. But in the last 5, 10 years or so, what have you seen happen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We started here probably in the late 70s when we purchased a couple of buildings on Balsam Road. And since then, we went through a lot of different situations, and we kind of struggled at times, and probably back in the 1980s or something, we were in contact with the police department, and they mentioned that on Balsam Road they had something like 300 some contacts a year. And we said, what's going on? Okay. And so we decided to do something, and we put together a program where we got all the owners on Balsam Road, the police department, the alderperson, and so forth together, and we started talking about it. And it was a big plus, because now we could share ideas, get to know the people next to you, and that was it really helped us out a lot as far as cleaning up the street. And now we're down to very few calls a year, okay? And we've entertained George Hanks to come out, who's from the city, and he helped us do an inspection of the buildings. We had Marla Rouse that does a weekly pass-by, and she'll give out notices of things on the street. So what happened is we basically took active role as landlord to clean up the street view, we call it. So when you walk down or drive down Balsam Road or Russet Road or Raymond Road, you're not going to see a lot of litter and stuff laying around, and that was a big plus for us, okay? And then Sheree was talking about some of the things that happened. They put in the gardens behind us in the park. The one thing I want to say that the reason I stayed in this area this long, and we'll probably stay here till my end, whatever, is that you have a living community here. This place, somebody's always trying to do something to make it better, okay? And whether it's the police department or whether it's the people in the neighborhood, the shopping center, if you look at the shopping center, since I've been here, they've redone the whole shopping center when they bought it. They put it in the library, community center, Walgreens. And so I'm just saying that people are always constantly trying to get things better, okay? And this church has really been a cornerstone for us, okay? All the activities that go on, it really is all taking place here. So you have to stay with it. You can't go pick up litter one day and say that I'm done. You got to go back the next day and pick up a little more. Okay, so it's kind of the way that things are. It's, you get people that move in and move out, and sometimes you'll get a good a good year, a lot of good tennis, and sometimes you get some where you have to kind of watch a little closer. So it's been very interesting. It's been very challenging, and I loved it all the way. So it was great. It's a great neighborhood. Orchard Ridge and Meadowwood is our home for 50 years. We'll never move. Okay, people are great. Community is great. Okay.
So Becky, you hear the story about you know you have to go out every day, and as the husband of a teacher, I get that. Maybe I see that on a regular basis as an educator. You're going. I don't know how long you've been principal at Orchard Ridge. How?
So I've been at Orchard Ridge now 4 years.
Okay, so how have things changed in the 4 years that you've been there? I mean, what from when you came to now, what are the changes you've seen?
So I would say our transient or our homeless population has increased for us at Orchard Ridge. So that makes resource management kind of tricky. But for us, positively at the school is I'm a pretty big advocate for resources. And so we have, full-time school psychologist, which when I started was not even a half-time school psychologist in our school. We have a full-time social worker, and when I started, that was a 50% position. So those two things, and we've also done a lot of work around, positive behavior support systems. And from that then shifts this, our work as far as like going out and being in the community. So you'll often see teachers walking kids home, checking in. The nice thing about being a neighborhood school was just a prime example of like last week, a student had an art accident, paint. And as a fourth grader, they did not want to wear clothes that we would obviously have at school. So I was able to walk the student home, be able to get a change of clothes, and be able to come right back to school with very little missed learning time. I would say the other thing for us is really just as a staff and as a community recognizing like our kids come to school, they play together at night, and they are together at school all day. So it's really like having all of these brothers and sisters in one building all of the time. You have to think about that a little bit differently than you would if you're in a school where people are coming from multiple different neighborhoods. It's a little bit different in how you interact because our kids play and get along like their brothers and sisters, right? And they can hate each other for a minute and then turn around and love each other the next minute. I don't know if any of you are siblings or have had children that get through that and get along like that, but that's something that is a huge thing for us. And for us to just be able to have those conversations with our students about knowing that this is how that actually works for them and acknowledging that. I would say the other big thing that's shifted for our community is we've been doing a lot more outreach. So we meet every month with Joining Forces for Families. We connect around resources for our families in the community, around mental health services, transportation to and from dental appointments, transportation to and from doctor's appointments. So I know that those things, as our homeless population increases, and as our population of lower income families also increases, we know we need to work in a different way. And so those are some of the things that we at school are working on, and then trying to connect with the community about how to do that. For us, Good Shepherd is, like you said, a cornerstone. For our school, it's the same way. Good Shepherd adopted us 4 years ago, and in that work, we partner with them for lots of things, from pen pals to clothing for some of our families, to snacks every week that we have in our classrooms. And so for us, it's about like thinking about what do our kids need and our families need, and then how do we find resources to have those needs be met.
Lieutenant Hanson, how are things kind of from your perspective here?
I give it two perspectives. One is as someone that grew up in Chapel Hill Road,
okay.
So real close by, and then as now being intimately involved with the police department, knowing every call that comes in, I'm part of it. The reason I'm doing this is because Father Maher, I go to St. Maria Goretti Church, and in the 80s he thought I should consider being a priest, and I have a microphone and I'm up on the he's not going to believe this, and Joan Horenik was there too, so, and my boss wanted some pictures, so make sure I was here tonight. So my perspective is from growing up and then here. And what I would say is it has changed, and it's changed dramatically. there was not the diversity that is present now in what is called Southwest Madison as it was in the 80s and 90s, okay? And it has been a struggle for some communities. It has been a struggle for people that have lived here decades and decades, and I know this because I hear this. Why do those kids do this? Why do those kids do that? And why does this happen? Why does that happen? We see that. We get the police calls. We get the police calls on suspects, on victims, on you name it. And we have to go investigate and render the situation safe. We did not have, decades ago, the amount of alert tones. So right now, there's probably normal radio chatter going on in this police radio. When you have an alert tone, it's alerting the officers to, this isn't a normal call coming on, it's going to be weapons or violence or robbery, bank robbery, whatever it is. We have a high volume of those in comparison, and the chief talks about this all the time, in comparison to what we did decades ago. And this neighborhood, this area is not immune to that. We have had a young 15-year-old, I think he was, I was working that night, shot on Leland, died on Balsam. We have had shots fired on Russet. We've had people violently injured. It does happen, and we did not have that decades ago. And before we started, as we were mingling, I met a few individuals here that have lived here for decades, since the 60s and 70s. They have not seen this as in the 80s and 90s until as of late. The other thing that the police department hears frequently is we always knew where the problem was on Allied Drive because it was so famous, right? We had open-air drug markets, we had shots fired, we had prostitution, we had everything. Can I say that in church? We had everything that was...
You're asking the media guy. That's the wrong person. You should turn to Rick and ask him.
We had that on Allied Drive, and we put in an enormous amount of resources in Allied Drive. The feds came in, the police department was there, and landlords changed. The city got involved. They revitalized various areas of Allied Drive. So, in a sense, we would hear in the police department, you push the problem out of Allied Drive, and it moved to other areas in the city. Displacement, whatever you want to call it. That's not us to decide. It's for the betterment of people, because what you have is a neighborhood of great people. I've known Sheree for 3 years now, since 2015. You have a neighborhood of great people. You have a percentage, either that live here or are visiting, that shoot up the place, that deal drugs, that do their thing. And it's a very small percentage. But what they do makes a lot of noise. And some of our shots fired on Russet are people that do not live on Russet. But it gets the tap that their shots fired on Russet, it's a bad place. So Adam Kneibler, who most of you know is our neighborhood officer, he started here in the neighborhood in 2016. Initially, a lot of shots fired, a lot of violence, a lot of fights, street fights. Through his hard work, being on there as often as he can on foot patrol, our numbers are down for violence in this area. We still have a ways to go when you compare it to other neighborhoods, but we're not leaving. And just to conclude that question, what has changed, we did not have a dedicated neighborhood officer until, I think, 2015 to this neighborhood. So when we see a rise in violence and calls for police service, we know it's time to add a permanent neighborhood police officer. Adam is that person, and the goal is to just immerse yourself in, that's my mom probably calling, are you preaching? And he's in the neighborhood to own it, to be foot patrol, to get to know everybody, and to build trust so people know it's a constant police officer to know and trust. And at our last shooting, he got call after call from people that wanted to be anonymous, that he built rapport with, that were very, very informative.
So if we've kind of now set the tone and kind of the foundation of how things look, let's kind of try and look forward and say, you know, let me start with you, Becky. I mean, when you think about what's coming, what do you need to deal with next? What are the next big challenges that you're going to face? You've already got your school psychologist now. I mean, you've overcome some hurdles. What's the next big thing that you're going to have to deal with?
I think for us will be ongoing ways to support families around healthcare, mental health needs that are not right here in our community. A lot of our families are not driving all around Madison to access resources and access support, or have people that navigate the healthcare system with them. And I tell you honestly, it's tricky, right? Like, we all know that the healthcare system is very paperwork laden, and there's all this fine print. And so thinking about how do we help families with that is definitely one of our ongoing and will continue to be our focus. The other thing that for us has really become evident, particularly this year, is, you know, how do we support our families with our youngest children? Like, where are the daycare facilities that are close by? Where is the wraparound care for our children because our parents are working? I would say one of my biggest challenges right now is that 4K is at Orchard Ridge, which is amazing, but 4K is a half-day program. And what that means is that our families have to figure out how to do a midday pickup, right? And unless that falls perfectly at their lunch hour, which, let's be honest, if you're riding a Madison Metro bus to and from work, it's never going to work. So it limits who can actually attend a 4K program, which was intentionally set up to prepare students to be ready for school. So for us, it's like thinking about how do we partner and file some child care wraparound services for our school. Before school, a full day program for 4K, after school programming, because we know that our families need that to be able to work. That problem comes forth to our building every week, and that has changed from where it used to be. And then I would say the other big piece for us is continuing to work on how do we support families that are homeless, because that is increasing, and our families want to stay at Orchard Ridge, and so we are literally cabbing families from the east side of Madison and having them cabbing kids 45 minutes to be able to stay at school with the kids that they know. And so that also gets to be really tricky for us. Not to mention, there's all these other things that come about in your community, but if I had to name like really 3 big things for us to be planning for in the future, in my ongoing conversations, it would really be those 3 things. They're the things I talk to my superintendent about, they're the things that I talk to the school board members about, they're the things that when community people, on voting day, if people want to stop and talk to me, that's what we got to talk about. Got any ideas for wraparound care for 4K? Because we want all of our children to have every opportunity that they can, and just by foundation right now, some of our systems aren't set up to provide all of our families with the ability to kind of eliminate some of those opportunity gaps.
So speaking of the superintendent, I had the same conversation with her about 4K, and she was talking about piloting. Are you all one of the pilot schools that's going to potentially get that full day 4K? Because you're right, it makes no sense from a practical standpoint, you really have to either have the most flexible of jobs or not work to be able to have a kid go.
Right. So at this point, we're not a pilot. We've talked about it since I've been at Orchard Ridge about how to become a pilot, but we are not currently that. And so the other struggle for us was the YMCA used to provide before and after school care for our building, and this summer in the middle of July, they pulled out. And they pulled out for a variety of what they needed to pull out for, right? There are definite reasons that they had to and could not maintain that program, but that caused a gap for a lot of our kids too. Yeah. So, like both of those 2 things they're a hard crutch for a lot of our families. So families that would have been at 4K are not currently there, just due to the amount of care.
Sheree, what do you, when you kind of look ahead, what do you see as the big challenges facing this neighborhood right now?
Continuing to support families. We need more resources in this community to support the people that lives here, especially when we are saying we're going to have low-income families. If we don't have the resources to provide to them, then we create problems in the community. and continuing to give them the community health resources, joining forces. We need funding to do this. Like with my community health office, I teach and train people about living with chronic diseases. If we go to try to figure out why people are not able to work, many people gonna say, well, I lost my job, my blood pressure was up, and I didn't have money to get my medication, and so they continue to miss days from work. So if we can support the community health office and allow me to teach and train people, have those classes, because right now I'm volunteering doing that. I thank Good Shepherd for giving me, making flyers when I need it to put out in the community. Those flyers are really needed. When people come to the community health office with housing issues, needing a blood pressure check twice a week, that's something that I do. So we just need more funding to support what we have in this community, the people that we have, and that would decrease the crime. You know, if we keep John Road, having these people, supporting them and finding a job, and along with Family Resource Center. We don't have a Family Resource Center here. We have one, which I'm a collaborative partner with, at H. Struggle Court in the East Madison Community Center. But we don't have a family resource here. I'm the closest of a family resource center that you're gonna get. I have 42 patients a month. From 45 to 42 people I serve voluntarily, asking Good Shepherd to Xerox flyers, getting smaller donations to print and to offer, you know, training courses, having different healthcare providers. I'm a collaborative partner with Access Clinic, and I'm glad to be a part of that, and along with public health. Public health has been supporting me too. If we don't address the illness that's going on in this community, along with the homelessness, you know, and I'm glad we have 2 food pantries. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And Orchard Ridge and Good Shepherd and Maria Karate trying to get involved in addressing the issues of this community. If we can support people, make them be sustainable to live in this community and not evict them and have them out in another community, then we'll be helping Madison, because our people won't be going to another community having the same problems. We need to start really focusing on addressing the issues that's going on in our community.
So, Lieutenant Hanson, you hear Sheree speak briefly about resources, and I know she's talking about resources kind of in the healthcare area and in the homelessness area, but with a new Midtown police station going up, in theory, you know, your officers will have hopefully a little more time in this direct area, right? I mean, is that, so as you kind of look ahead, what do you see as the opportunities? What do you see as the challenges?
So this is strictly from the police side of it, because Sheree has spoken about the resources, and we see resources in the community. And there is, I don't know if I said this earlier, but Good Shepherd has been the rock, the absolute go-to church in this area for resources, volunteers, people, and it's awesome. And I can list on hands and toes the number of agencies that have some play in here, from churches to governments to nonprofits, and it's great. And then the city will fund grants. That's great. To really make inroads into progress in this neighborhood and I'm talking Russet, Balsam, Leland, Teresa, Terrace, Betty's, where there's crime, there's low-income housing, there's high-density population. To make inroads, I think it really starts at a very young age, as Ms. Kundert was saying, and it starts with accountability. So we're giving resources. We got a lot of resources out there. Now let's help struggling parents, struggling mothers, struggling kids. We know that the police can have an influence on kids, talking about right from wrong, don't join a gang, don't do drugs and all that, until about 7th or 8th grade. And then the great divide starts. Are you going to focus on sports, academics, and all that, or are you going to join gangs, crime, or what have you? So our focus is at that level, because after that, 8th grade, between stealing cars, drugs, if they go that path, it's hard to get them back. There's not a lot in the justice system for them. So our focus is accountability. Our focus is the youth at that age. And so then you say, well, what can be done? Of the resources needed, it's obviously you got to take care of yourself first. You got to have food and housing and all the things on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic needs to keep well. But after that, you would be shocked at what a 4 to 8 to 10-year-old is already exposed to regarding violence in a household. And it is horrendous. It is abuse, whether it's to them or they witness it seen. So some seeing a relative under that situation. So somehow that circle has to be broken. So I've been with the department since 2001, long enough now where some of the kids that when I was a neighborhood officer and more on the street, they are now parenting. And they are involved, somehow we have contact with them, one way or another. And somehow that cycle needs to be broken. So for sustaining, what does the neighborhood need? Along with these resources, I go back to going to the youth and accountability. So there's that old saying, a hand up, not a handout, that is applicable in this neighborhood. Along with what we are providing for resources, show how to go to the next level for sustainment in housing, in employment, in transportation, and everything. But it's an enormous problem. It's not going to happen overnight.
Ernie, I'm sorry, Sharon, you want to?
And when I say about resources, it's not just about my community health office. It's about educating people, educating them in a non-traditional way. And that's what the community is lacking. They don't understand that you take your medicine per how the doctor prescribes it. Not just take your pill and your blood pressure is down for the day and you think it's like an aspirin. What I say about providing them with, educate them. I done had 10 women that I have teach and train about living with diabetes and healthy eating. One of her legs got cut off before I was able to really get to her and have her be around our class. But resources, it's not just providing people with money, it's educating them. And that's what a lot of this community, they need to be educated, how to be a neighbor, how to look out for each other, how to respect each other. If I say your child did this, then your child, you need to address that issue. We need to have a communication line where if Sheree called me and she said you did this, the parent gonna address it. We need a safe passageway. And when I say resources, it's not about money, it's about educating people. You would be surprised of a lot of things that the people in this community don't know about. They don't know how to cook a healthy meal. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Something that would be so simple to you, but if you didn't ever have to make a salad or know the importance of eating fruit and vegetables, you know. So when I say resources, and Madison, Wisconsin, they have a lot of things. Oh, we got this resource, we got this resource. They don't have it. They have places that tell you they got this, they got that, but they do not have the funding. So you sending people from one place to the next place to the next place, and making their life just difficult. You know, I had a client I had to send to Journey Mental Health. I drive them over there. They say, oh no, his appointment over on Schrader. I get them to Schrader. Oh no, I think he needs to, wait a minute. If this man is diagnosed with a mental illness, why are you making it so confusing? You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that if you don't have insurance, you don't have someone to guide you through certain things, you out here, you know.
Yeah.
So resources, it's about, in this community, I see people need to be more educated.
Ernie, what do you see when you kind of think about these challenges and you're kind of, in your experience looking forward, what are you seeing as the challenges in this neighborhood?
Well, there's I come at it from a little different approach, I think, in some ways. Let me go back to, first of all, what's happening on Balsam Road and somewhat on Russet Road. On Balsam Road, we have 19 buildings and 99 apartments. And Commonwealth Development, which you probably are aware of, has purchased 5 of the buildings out of the 20 we have. Road Home's got 2, so there's 7 buildings there, okay? And that accounts for roughly, probably 30-some apartments. They pretty much cater to the homeless and the low income, okay? The good news is that these people have gone in and rehabbed their buildings. So they were built in the 1970s. They have gone in there and stripped the buildings, put all new kitchens in, bathrooms in, and woodwork and everything, okay? So they're really up to the 2018 standard, if you will. They also get a lot of public funding and donations, etc. And so they have to maintain a very tight over the tenants, which is really good, because before that we had individual owners out there that we always called them absentee owners and didn't do anything with their buildings. But the good news is with Commonwealth, etc., they've been very, very good tenants. So we'll see how that plays out, okay, over the next few years. Okay, we're glad to have them as partners right now. Okay, so the street, they put a new street in, we rehabbed the buildings. We had 2 new owners came in, private owners, and they totally gutted their buildings, put new windows in, put new kitchens in, and just new appliances, new furnaces, etc. Okay, so that's the good news that's happening, and that's going to help the community because you're going to get better tenants, and you're going to have people. It's kind of interesting. If you see graffiti on a wall, you'll see more of it. But when you have a nice new place like that, it's amazing how these people will take care of it. Okay? So that's the good news in there. The other part is the people. In all the years I've been here, it's been many years, the thing that I've always looked at and felt, I'm not sure how you deal with it, but you have a single parent that maybe has 1, 2, or 3 children, and the parent probably does not have an education. And I always said, how can someone with probably not having an education, 2 or 3 children, single parent, and get a job and raise their children? I said, my wife and I had 4 children, and it was a struggle. I don't know how one person could do it. And that's one of the things that's happening, okay? And I've seen some of the children that the parent would go out, maybe go to work, and the children were left at home by themselves to fend for themselves. They might be small children, whatever, okay? So my idea is this, is that perhaps what we need to do, and kind of following what Therese said here, is if there's a way that we could get a mother or a single parent educated on how to raise children, if that's the right term, okay, is that you might even have them get a degree, so to speak, some sort of a parent degree, whatever. Maybe even pay them to come to the class, okay, so that they can come there and tell them this is what you have to do, because they came up in an environment where they didn't learn how to do it, okay? And so we could sort of help them in that respect. I was at a meeting here in this church not too long ago, and it was about teenagers, and Ray was there, as a matter of fact, and they had 5 young men there, and they were all in their teens, I would assume, probably 16 to 18, whatever, and very well-mannered, very well-dressed, and so forth. And so they were sitting there in one area, and that other area was another man down there with a suit coat on and a tie, and they were all black Africans, okay? And I said, how do we get this child here, this 16-year-old, over to a suit like that? What's the progress that they have to go through to become in that area? Found out later he was a lawyer, okay? And so I asked the kid, what do you have to get to that degree? Because at one time I heard that in Memorial that like 50% don't even finish school, okay? And so the young man says you need a support system. It could be a parent or a relative or a friend or whatever, but you need a support system to help you move through the life, okay? So there was a young man who was in my building, and he was 18 years old, and he was a senior in high school, and he dropped out before graduation. And I said, why? He said, the school was no fun anymore, okay? That's what you're going to do now. You're going to get a job. Well, what kind of a job are you going to get, okay? Well, long story, he ended up getting a job making pizza and so forth. So I called him one day, and I said, look, I would like to take you around to 2 or 3 places of businesses and have you meet people that are doing different kind of works, whether it be computer programming or auto repair, whatever, but just take you there and have you talk to somebody and say, how did you get to this point and what do you have to do? Because I'm not sure these kids sometimes understand the end product out there, okay? And so if they could see or be associated with somebody like that, that they could kind of reflect and say, well, this is what I had to do, to get to this point, okay? I think the other thing that's been probably all up the school system is maybe not all of them are academic decline. Maybe they need a skill set, okay? And I think there's some work in that area now of perhaps going to a trade school versus trying to get academics, okay? I mean, I had calculus. I've never used calculus in my life, so I'd have to study it. Okay? So, to me, what needs to be done, in my opinion, is we need to get to the single parent and see if we can't get some kind of a class going, if they would, and even pay them to come there and have them engage in it, okay? Maybe the youth, we could take some of the youth, 2 or 3 of them together and sort of get a click, if you will, and maybe visit some places places like that, and then maybe get a mentor. I always said it'd be nice if I could adopt a teenager, not physically, but if I could adopt them, and be their mentor, and work with them in school, and work with them in high school, and even help them in college, even maybe financially, okay? If we could get that kind of a relationship going. I think it was kind of like big brothers and big sisters kind of a concept, whatever. I've been to so many meetings in the last 40 years talking about the problems of problems. And my point is a stop. I don't need any more meetings. What I need is, what would you do? Let's come up with an answer. Get some folks together, and if you look around, there's not many black people in this group, okay? And yet we're trying to plan things for them, and then right down the street. You need to get those people in here. You need to get the teenagers in here and say, what do you want out of life, okay? And see what they tell you, okay? Because I found myself where I say, well, I'm going to go get a I had an experience one time in the soccer team. And I was the coach on the soccer team, and I coached soccer many years. And so I was out here at Balsam Road in the park, and we had a team out there in the field, and there's two little girls, two small little girls, says, would you girls like to come out to the park and play soccer? They went home and told Mom, this white guy, this old-haired white guy tried to get us to go to the park. I got a phone call. I thought we were going to get the police involved and everything. So you can see there is a color situation here. Now, Coach, which we all know, did a great job because he knew how to deal with kids, and those kids respected him, okay? So the black community, in my opinion, have to get more engaged. Now, with these 5 buildings, with these low income and homeless people, they never feel like they're part of a community. That's what I always found, that the tenants are saying, well, I'm over here for a while, so I'm not part of the community. So they don't get involved. But the meals we've been having and so forth, we have been getting more and more of them involved, and they don't move sometimes much anymore, simply because there's not a lot of places to move to.
And they've got a good school,
So
too.
anyway,
So, yeah.
And the reason why it feels like a separate community is because of the culture. Black people was taught what goes on in the house, Sheree, stays in the house. Don't let the white people in your business, you know, and that's why it takes until people get evicted or their circumstances get really bad before they reach out to ask for help, because they want to keep it a secret, hold it in the house, thinking they can deal with it, which it creates a bigger problem. And as a community health worker, they see a face like their face, they're able to trust. So that's okay.
Lieutenant, you wanted to add?
I know you have another question, Adam. I'll just add, you have heard in the media, and it's out there, it's called a BYRNE grant, B-Y-R-N-E, and it's now called CBCR with the new federal administration. It goes from this church all the way to Elver Park, that area, to address crime. And some things that Sheree and Ernie have mentioned are part of this pillar, and we hope to have it in place this fall. It is a crazy system, the federal bureaucracy, for approvals and dotting every I and crossing T and then redoing this. We hope to have it in the spring, but hopefully this fall. $1 million. And we are hiring people for safe passages, to be adults from the community to roam the streets when we can't be there 24/7 on the street. We can respond 24/7. We can't have a presence. To walk kids from schools, after schools, to have a presence in the neighborhood. We're addressing what some of the things we're talking about, single parent households. We're going to have a group for that. We are addressing crime with extra patrols, foot patrols, dedicated foot patrols instead of just a squad car going by. So we've put these pillars in place, and then the 4th one is mentoring for youth. There are not enough male role models in this neighborhood. We keep hearing coach, but that's the only male African-American name that we hear. We need more. So this BYRNE grant is coming, and I've been saying this since 2015. Sheree's been part of this, and we've been approved. So the money's coming. It's a slow process, but it'll be here for those programs, and I just wanted to put a plug in for that.
By the way, I believe, Rick, are you collecting the questions? I just wanted to give that. So I think.
I'm not so much collecting, but it's probably a good time to mention it, which is, come around this for a second. For those of you that we walked through here, there are sheets that we had a bunch of questions that they're answering right now, but if you had questions that you'd like to ask of the panelists, there are sheets here. I also brought the extra sheets up here, and I have some pens up here, so if you'd like to be writing those now, or someone wants to raise your hand if you have a question but you don't have a piece of paper, I can get those to you as we continue this conversation. We will answer those in the last 15 minutes of the forum. So does anybody need a sheet?
Over here, Rick.
Okay.
With this gentleman.
Let me get that back to them, and I'll return this back to you.
So Ms. Kundert, let me ask you, I think people always want to feel like they have an opportunity to help. So if everybody who's here tonight wants to help by virtue of simply being here. That's what they're saying. So as principal, I know principals like to have action plans, that kind of thing. So give people an action plan here. I mean, if they're sitting here right now thinking, okay, well, I'm hearing about challenges, I'm hearing about problems, I'm hearing about opportunities, guide me.
So we have worked with Good Shepherd to kind of talk about what are ways that people can help. And so I think there's always a couple different ways that can happen. Sorry, this thing does not want to stay on my ear. One of them is for people that want to do direct support, right? So there are lots of students that either are looking for mentors or students that are looking to have a tutor in school. And something as simple as sitting down and reading with a student once a week, coming in for 30 minutes, is really helpful. I think it's important for all of our kids to know that the world outside cares about you as well, right? Like, because that's what's really hard for kids when they're 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, is to know that other people are invested and want to see them improve and have a bright future. So I would say tutoring and mentoring at the schools, and that goes particularly and falls off often, like you were saying, in middle school. But we have a group of middle school teachers that have created a system called, or a program called Intentional Mentoring. And they have training that they offer to people, and they partner you up with a student that you would stay with over a long period of time. And it's a commitment from the student, from the parent, and then you as a mentor. So that is a great opportunity. We start pairing up at that age in 4th grade, and we have 5 people that have carried over now. And so they were in 4th grade, 5th grade, and now 6th grade, the 3rd year of that. So that is one way. I know here at Good Shepherd, people donate monetarily for snacks for kids. I believe this weekend we're having a breakfast. One of our families, their mom died unexpectedly on Easter. And so we've been working with that family whose 25-year-old brother is literally driving them every day from Fond du Lac, which is just a lot of transportation costs, right? And gas for them that they had not planned on. Helping to provide some support around getting groceries for families. Helping and donating, we got this last year, probably, I would say 52 pairs of snow pants. You know, like those sorts of things that we think about are needed for a lot of our kids. Healthcare, all of those like costs. So those are things that if you don't have time, because honestly I know people are really busy, those are things that people can give in a donation in that way. And I know that there are people at Good Shepherd particularly who don't have the time to come and donate or extra money, and so they're doing pen pal writing with our kids too. So like thinking about how do we expand that. We also have opportunities at school of just different events that are coming up. And so if you're interested in coming and donating and volunteering one evening at school for, we're going to have a dance coming up in May. Toki always has different events that are going on. And even if it's like outside of this neighborhood, schools are always looking for people to come in and to support students. And if you're not liking reading, fine, we'll hook you up with somebody to do some math work. Although I have to tell you, math has changed drastically. My 4th
Yes,
grader is
that would be
doing,
accurate.
You know, our
Yeah.
4th graders are doing things that I did not do until like 7th grade. And I'm always like, wow, you guys are so brilliant. So thinking about those specific things is important. If you hear about grants, if you hear about those sorts of things, sharing them with us, letting us know. Orchard Ridge is currently looking at like, we're a building from 1958. You talk about revamping things and thinking about what that looks like. Our library, right, had books from 1960. We've been weeding through our library to get current books in the hands of kids. So when you go shopping, and if you're at Barnes & Noble and you find a couple really cute books for elementary or middle school kids, you can donate them to the school too. So all of these things are really important, and I think You know, what I would always say, which is great, but just not always possible, your time. You know, your time, your smile, your energy with our kids. Every day, even if I'm having a bad day, the kids always say that to me. Miss Spooner, you're always happy. And I'm like, I'm not always happy, but I'm going to pretend I am, because then that also helps you to feel a little bit better, right? So how do we wrap ourselves around our community? I think there are lots of different ways, and if you need help thinking about what is your lifestyle, how is it that you can help or not help, gladly, there are lots of people here that would sit down and talk with you about it. If you call the school, we have lots of people that would be able to do that with you too, and talk about like how you could support or help at school or in the community. If you have an idea about how to provide me with before or after school care, call me up. We'll have coffee, we'll do dinner. I'll figure that out for sure.
I'll pose that to anybody else sitting here. Are there any tangible pieces of advice, ways people can help?
Okay, so the summertime is about to come.
Please, promise. Promise? You swear?
We identify a lot of homeless kids and parents not able to have child care. Good Shepherd has a summer camp program, and maybe people can donate adopt a kid to be a part of summer camp program at Good Shepherd or Orchard Ridge, or, you know, give them an opportunity that their parents are not able to give them. I have Project Baby. I provide baby items for a lot of young mothers and teens in this community. Donate a box of diapers to the library. The library feeds the kids. The church makes sandwiches. Donate to that, because the summertime, these kids are out of school. They're hungry. They need shelter. And the place that they are coming to is Meadow Ridge Library. So if there's a possible way you can donate more food to the community center and Good Shepherd Church, that would be great. We have a group here that make sandwiches for the kids over at the community center. Donate so they can, you know, buy more food and give the kids the opportunity. Mike Madison, y'all have a project teaching teens how to be officers. Yep. I'm sitting with 2 women, young girls, would like to be police officer that's from Toki. Donate, and how much does that cost? 0? Well, you need to bring information, because the kids in this community don't have that kind of information. That would give them another opportunity. See, it's a lot of things that they don't have, but we want them to be different. If they don't know nothing, how can they be different, you know? So if that program is free, can you please provide that to me? So that would be 2 kids I'll have as a young officer.
10-4. Don't give me a microphone in church. I can start preaching. I guess I would add, you know, be creative, but the only advice I'd say, I guess I'd offer 2 programs. One, if you own a business or you're retired and you want to do something, round up some kids and do it. And work with Sheree, our neighborhood officers, the resource center, and do it. And it's awesome, because kids are always trying to impress. But what I'd say is, don't be a one-and-doner. Don't do it once to feel good. Don't do it twice to feel good. You have to be sustained, because you're not going to break into kids one time and think you've solved the world's problems. It has to be sustained, whether that's every other day, whether it's weekly or whatever. And I'm sure several of you, if you're already here tonight, already volunteer with youth ministry, and you know that you don't break into a kid, no matter who that kid is, the first day. It takes a while to build that trust. And that's why we have the neighborhood officers. It takes a while, consistency, sustained time in a neighborhood or with a program or event for those kids to open up and have a comfort level in building that trust. So whatever your program is, don't be a one and doneer, be sustained this summer.
I think another thing that would be nice if the church, Good Shepherd here, could find a way to get these single parents in a meeting like this, okay, and sort of find out what their needs are and what their thinking is, okay, because most of them are non-homeowners, and somehow we need to get them out of the house and get associated with their neighbors and get associated with the people down the street and find out what would help them. Okay, we can sit here and talk all day long what we think they need, but we need to find out what they would like to have too. So if there's a way that we could get those people energized, that would be nice.
And that shouldn't be hard because they are in programs like the road home. They have an on-site social worker. When people is in programs, they should be accountable to do certain things. So road home is working with us. So we should tell them, hey, we have a meeting, we need all your tenants to be at the table, to be accounted for. So we need your ideas. Write down, because I ain't gonna say doodle, but write down and then we go to them. You know what I'm saying? And make them feel comfortable to communicate with us. But the road homes in Commonwealth, which Commonwealth have been having their tenants come out and do little events, you know, for all of Commonwealth tenants getting to know each other. So they have been working on that model, but we just need the road homes to get on board too.
If folks have questions, I'm going to start asking some of the questions. Colin had this question for you, Ernie, but I'd like to even broaden it and ask it of everybody here if they're interested in answering. The question was, what's the primary reason that causes families to move out of this neighborhood?
There's probably, I guess there's a lot of different reasons in there. It could be that they want to move to a different part of the city with their friends. Some of them, most of the people that live on Balsam and Russet Road probably are not natives of Madison. They probably came from another city, and some of them will pick up and move back, okay? And sometimes it may be that they need a larger place to stay for children. And as a landlord, we don't rent to people to evict them. That's not the reason we rent to them, okay? As a matter of fact, I always said we should never evict any tenant, okay? But if a tenant is not paying their rent or they're not doing something, or doing something they shouldn't be doing, you should give them the option to move and say, if you move, you don't get evicted. Because once you get evicted, it's hard to find a place again. But most of the people will move on their own for, we never ask them why they move.
Anybody want to weigh in on that? Why do families move out of this neighborhood?
A lot of families get behind in their rent, or their family size increase due to them trying to help other people, and other people come into your space and make trouble, then that causes them to have problems with their landlord.
So we're talking economic problems largely.
Yes, economic problems. And a lot of people moved out of this community due to different owners raising the rent, and they weren't able to pay for the rent, so they end up being homeless and
Ms. Kundran, I wanted to, there's another question here asking to explain more about what homelessness looks like in this neighborhood, and I'd love your take on that.
So we have, we could say homelessness as far as I've had students living in vehicles, So that would be probably what most people would say. I would say also it is about families that are doubled up. So what that means is that one family currently has a rental agreement with somebody, and another family is having some of their own challenges or struggles, and then they go and double up with that family, so that they do not have a rental agreement or expectation that they are staying in a place. So we, at schools, for us, it's about where did the kids lay their head down at night for when they first come to Madison, or however that works. That is like where their first opportunity for school would be. And then some of our families live in hotels. Some of our families are on wait lists to either get into a shelter or to get into a hotel. Kids that we end up having, if families get evicted, they're trying to find a location that they are able to stay, and so then that's where we provide, the district provides cabbing to make sure that if anything does stay at least consistent, it's that they're still at the same school. So that's really what when we talk about that, that's what that means for us.
Lieutenant, there's a question here about, are there more or fewer calls to the Commonwealth and Road home properties on Balsam than others?
Great question. It would only be anecdotal. There are statistics. We keep a statistic on every police call that we go to.
Yeah.
And I don't have that. I don't want to commit. For a while, we did have, about 2.5 years ago, an individual that created a high volume of calls at the road home. And that person has since moved out of Dane County. And that drove an enormous amount weekly. So I can't commit to a number, whether it's higher or lower, and I'm sorry.
Let me follow up with you on that homelessness question, because there was a second part of it that I didn't ask Ms. Kundert, that being kind of the difference between what we might see downtown, where you see people maybe on the street, literally on the street. Are we seeing that in this neighborhood, or does homelessness take a different fashion? I
think it takes a different fashion. I think it's more individual downtown. I know it is more individual, and you're dealing with more alcohol, mental health issues with the homeless down there. Here, it is more family-based. So you have, as Ms. Kundert and Sheree know, and Ernie, a family is either evicted or kicked out. And I should just make a plug for landlords. They do make an effort to try and keep people, because the eviction process is so lengthy to actually move somebody out, and it's a lot of bureaucracy. However, what we see is more family-based out here, homelessness. And just to add on to that, what Ms. Kundert would see in the schools is that child, now you're used to living with 3 or 4 people, and we all, the best lights at Christmas sometimes are tail lights, right? After 7 days of living together, it's tail lights. We'll see you next Christmas. You're all in this house or apartment for now weeks or months on end, and the tension grows, and that's where we respond. So I will come in the morning and read reports of domestic after domestic or violence in an apartment, and what just eats at me is the young kids that are up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, that are in 2nd grade, 4th grade, whatever, and they witnessed it. The 12-year-old the other day calls 911 at 2 in the morning due to a disturbance going on in an apartment, and it's sad, because your kids and my kids sleep well through the night from 9 p.m. until 7 or 6 a.m. These kids that are homeless don't. And then you expect them to learn and give full attention in school. It doesn't happen. They fall asleep in school if they go. Or mom gives them a pass and lets them stay till 11 a.m. and, oh, by the way, they missed math and reading. It's very real, the issues that surround the homelessness, how it affects then law enforcement, school, and these kids.
Sheree, you wanted to add on to that?
Homeless in this community is when you're sitting in a library all day, and when you going to events just to eat, and when at the end, 8 o'clock, when the library's closed, then your mom tells you you can go to a friend's house and spend the night, and I'll meet you back at the library. Or when you got a lady that has a seizure, sit with me and say, I live in a building, in the basement, and I'm like, can I help you? You got medication? And she said, do you need something to sleep on? No, I have to sleep on the floor because at night I have these seizures. And if I fall, nobody's down in the basement to help me. But one of the lieutenants is allowing her to sleep in the basement. That is homeless, and that's what's happening in the community. That's what's happening when kids is living in a van and wait till 8, 9 o'clock to knock on their friend's door just to go in and take a shower because they've been there too long, and then the landlord noticed that it's too many people
Right.
in the house. So that's what's going on in Meadowwood community.
Principal Kundrat, this question's for you about, and I'll read it. What's the school doing to help a predominantly white staff learn to effectively communicate and engage kids and parents of color?
Yeah. So so Orchard Ridge has partnered, and we applied for a grant to be able to work intentionally with the National Equity Project, which is actually based out of California. And so we have, for the last 2 years, been engaging in that work. And for us, it's really about thinking about equity is not about just exploring my own biases. So I think, like in the district, we started doing professional learning, really thinking about our biases, which everybody has, right? Because we only know our own experience. And so from that, from every other conversation we have with people, we unintentionally or intentionally judge what their response is based upon my interaction and how that would intersect with me. So for us, it's been about an awareness and really being cognizant about our bias, stereotype threat, and then microaggressions and thinking about that work. For us, this last year has been really about us digging into and really exploring what an alliance is with our students. And so working intentionally with a student that we form a caring relationship with, that we earn, right? Because I'm going to be honest with you, it's not like I walk up and I'm the adult and I'm the principal, you're going to respect me, right? We say that, like as an adult, you will respect your elders, but that's not how the world technically works. So for me to work intentionally with a student, to form a caring relationship with them, that we can exchange information back and forth, and gives me the right to earn and demand their work, right? So I have to earn the right to demand from them their excellence. So that is really where our work has been right now. So thinking about what do we know about our own culture, what do we know about my own, how I was raised as I'm a child of a single mom with a really horrific divorce story that was in my life. How does how I was raised impact how I interact with people? And I have to still do that every day. When I interact with students, when I interact with families, I have to think about every single day, I have to have an awareness about what it is, has their experience been. Because none of us have experienced what they've experienced, what you've experienced, what I've experienced, because we only have done that in our own way. So we have to think about that. We have to think about when we are forming our relationships and what do we want all students to know and be able to do, we have to think about what is our consistent, coherent instruction. And how do we scaffold supports to make sure all kids are able to do the work that we expect from them. So our staff is predominantly white. That is, the district's been working for years to talk about how are we gaining people of color, how are people coming into this work and nurturing that, and it's still not present. You know, like that is still not in my candidates of hiring people last year, I did not have a single African American candidate presented to me as even to be able to consider to hire them. So that's a struggle right now, and Madison has called that out intentionally for us to think about. We've talked to and we've communicated with communities like Chicago, right? Minnesota, Minneapolis, and thinking about how do we recruit people to be able to come and work in Madison. But in the meantime, for us, it's about thinking about how do we examine our own biases, how do we open up our minds, build an awareness of how our interactions with people impact other people, and how do we get to a real conversation with our students. So right now at Orchard Ridge, we have literally 110 African American students and 110 white students. Like, that's where we are at. That's not where we were even 5 years ago. And then we also still have, 60 students that are multiracial and 40 students that are Latino and 12 Nepali students. So when we think about what is our population, it's about us really building that awareness and knowing that we need people to be facilitating those conversations for us and with us. And we've had conversations with families. We bring families in to talk about what families' needs are. But it's a work in progress for us. And it will always be a work in progress. For myself, I know I need to think about and I need to study African American history. I cannot talk about African American history, provide a well-rounded experience for my students if I have not studied myself, right? And I have to be aware of that. But if I'm not willing to study African American history, then I shouldn't be at Orchard Ridge. Like, that would be a disservice to my students. And so I learned about African American history in the little blue box when I was in school, right? I had a social studies textbook. That's what I learned about Booker T. Washington. So I know I have learning to do in that, and that's, for me, the awareness that I bring with my staff every single day, and we talk about it all of the time, and we're reading, like, multicultural teaching and the brain, and what does that impact on our brain and how we interact with kids.
I wanted to be sensitive to your time and kind of give you all an opportunity here before we wrap up to kind of summarize maybe your thoughts on, this is technically a community listening session, so folks here are listening to what you have to say, and I'll just start, Principal Kunder, with you, and we'll just work down the line. But maybe take a minute to kind of summarize your thoughts of what you've heard and maybe what you want to leave people with.
I think I heard a call to action from everybody up here for us and thinking about how we can support our community to take care of each other. How do we provide resources for families to be able to have their basic health needs, Maslow's hierarchy, where they're sleeping at night? How do we build that awareness so that we can serve our community? Because we know if people come here and stay here, then they're invested, right? You're like homeowners. You're invested in your home if you're an owner. But if you have this idea that you're a renter, then it's different in how you treat that location and treat that space. And so how do we provide caring, supportive environments so that we can all be homeowners, whether we're technically on a lease or if we are renting. But how do we get people to be invested and to care and to open up so that we can find out what people are really needing? Because I think if we don't have conversations with people, we are never going to know what they need. And we have to be real about that. Like, we have to be able to be vulnerable ourselves in order to ask somebody to be vulnerable with us.
Mr. Horonek?
I think probably what we're all looking for are some action plans. You can talk about problems over and over and over, but I think what we're all looking for are some answers. And so to me, the thing that we should be looking at is what we're going to do tomorrow. And you have to ask yourself, what would I do? Okay. So if you see somebody doing something, you say, well, you don't like what they're doing, that's fine, but what would you do? Okay. And so that's what this community needs, is to continue to work together and step forward as homeowners or whatever in the neighborhood and help develop some, I would call them action plans for tomorrow. Okay.
Ms. Wallace?
Okay. I think that we need to have real conversation, and when I say real conversation, we need to really hear what's going on in the community. I think that the people that's here and you all need to really try to be vested in supporting and listening to the people that don't have anything, and try to support them by making a difference. Like I said, get them involved these kids involved in something different, that the church needs to put more information out, open the doors to the community, get them involved in different programs that they are having in their church. If you really care about the community, put your literature out into the community. I think we need to keep our police neighborhood officer. We need a safe passage. The school needs to collaborate with the community center and the library and have real conversations on how to protect these kids' best interests. Get involved with it. You said that your staff is totally white. Okay, you got 110 black students, then I think you should try to do things that will get the parents involved, you know, maybe pay them for their volunteer time. You know, you got some parents that don't work. Try to get some funding to have the parents on the premises. Create a job where they won't, you know, they'll have, you investing in their time, although, and you teaching them something. You know, if you need black people to really, because you all cannot do it, white staff. Them kids don't see you like they would recognize a black mentor. You know what I'm saying? And it's just facts. You know, y'all have not experienced, you don't go through the things that these kids have encountered at home, and we do, black people need to stand up and be accounted for their own kids and the problems in the situation, but we need help. We need somebody to show us the difference. And with the support from the church and community leaders, we can do this. Meadowwood is not bad at all. We're a strong community. We can get through anything. As long as we have good people like you all backing us up, our little area that have problems can overcome it. We just need you all to believe in the community leaders, support the efforts that we're doing in the community, and believe me, it'll make a difference.
Lieutenant Hanson?
I'd just add, everything that you've said is great, and I'd just add, focus on a few things, the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things, and do them well, but do them sustained. So whatever the congregation comes up with, you're not going to build Rome in a day, and it's not all going to happen this summer. You know, this is going to be where you want it to be in one summer. It takes effort. It takes a focused way of going about this and sustainment. So as you make plans as a church, keep that in mind.
Thank you all so much for being here, for sharing your perspectives. Let's give them a round of applause. I'll turn it over to you, Rick. I just want to say thank everybody for coming out. I mean, that's so much of life is showing up. So thank you all for showing up.
I have to second that. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for the questions. And thank you, panelists, for giving your, I think, some frank perspectives about what's going on here and where we need to go forward from here. Appreciate the time. There is some coffee out in the lobby if people want to sit and talk afterwards for a couple minutes. This church will be open for a few more minutes if you have any other questions for the panelists that you would like to ask directly. One more reminder, if you would like, there's another forum tomorrow night at our Verona campus, same time, 6:30, different panelists, different topics, slightly different issues out there, but it should also be very informative as well. But thank you all for coming. Thank you as well.